In this video we'll demonstrate new functionality that has been added to the slider control in Alpha Anywhere. So you can see here we have a UX component displaying a slider control, actually three slider controls. And the first slider control is a standard slider control that selects a value from a range that goes from 0 all the way through 100. So this is the default slider that is selecting a numeric value. But now you can see we have a second slider here, and this slider is selecting from a predefined list of string values. So you can see there we can go with the poor, fair, average, good, and fantastic. So basically in this case the slider has been given a predefined list of choices, and those choices can either be static choices or dynamic choices that come from a data series. And then finally we see here a slider that is selecting a range of dates. So you can see that when we all the way on the left, the date is the beginning of 2013, and then all the way to the right, and it's the end of 2013. So now let's go and programmatically show how we can reset the range on the slider. So this slider right now is going between 0 and 100. I'm going to click this button over there, and you can see that now we've reset the range to be between 300 and 500. Now when I click this button, we're going to go and change the choices for the slider here, and now you can see that we're going between alpha, beta, and gamma. And now you can see on this slider here, which is going between January the 1st and December 31st of 2013, we're now going between dates in 2014. So let's go back to the builder now and see how we did this. So going back to the builder, here's the first slider, and if we look at the slider properties, we can see that this slider over here, if we look at slider properties, has a data type of number, whereas this slider over here has a data type of character. And then we've specified that the choices are static, and then here are our choices: poor, fair, average, good, and fantastic. But we could just as easily have chosen data series, in which case we could have defined a data series for the choices in the slider. And then of course, since it's a data series, the choices could come from a database query. It could have been a SQL query or a DBF query or a web service or whatever you wanted in the data series. And then finally, slider number 3, we've set that to be a type of date, and we've set the minimum date value, the maximum date value, and then we've also specified the date format. And by choosing default over here, we've automatically inherited the date format that is defined over here in date format. But we could have gone and specified an explicit date format. So once we've defined the date format, then we can specify a minimum value for the range and a maximum value for the range using whatever format is specified here in date format. So in this particular case, the date format here is month, day, year. So you can see that the minimum date value and the maximum date value are specified using the month, day, year format. So now that we've seen how we've actually set up the slider, and just one thing I'd like to point out is that the slider itself has got, the variable has got a value, a data type of numeric, which is sort of meaningless in the case of a slider that is using date or string values. That you can sort of really ignore this property over here. So now let's go back and look at how these buttons operated. So let's go now, and if we look at the buttons, we can see that the button is just calling into a JavaScript function called reset slider 1 or reset slider 2, etc. So let's go back to our JavaScript now and look at the first function, reset slider 1. So we can see here that this function is first getting a pointer to the slider control, so that's slider number 1, and then once it has the pointer to the control, it just sets the minimum value to 300, the maximum value to 500, and then calls the refresh method. So the next function, reset slider 2, which is going to set the choices in a slider that is doing character values, is defined over here. So let's pause there and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing describing how the choices in a slider are changed dynamically. And here in the case of the second slider, which is displaying a predefined list of character values, you can see that we've gotten the pointer to the slider, and then we've set the data property of the slider object to an array that contains the choices alpha, beta, gamma. Then we've called the refresh method, and then in order to pick the initial value on the slider, we've just called the set value method on the slider and set the value to beta. And then finally, for the date slider, to set the minimum and maximum value, again we get our pointer to the slider control, and then we set the minimum and the maximum value to a string that's in a date format, and then this string of course needs to match the format for dates that was specified in the slider's date format property over here. So since this slider date format is the default, which is month, day, year, we can see that our JavaScript over here needs to specify the minimum value and the maximum value using the month, day, year format, and then we just call the refresh method. So the ability to configure a slider to display, to select from values that are numeric, predefined string values or date values is a powerful addition to the slider control. Thank you very much for watching.